Okay. Hi Afia. Hi Rajeshri. Am I audible and is my screen visible? Okay. So, as you already know, this is the tutorial session for wildlife ecology. We'll be discussing week 9 today. And I am Geetika Agarwal. I'm a PhD scholar from CESISA. So, before we begin, if you guys have any doubts on the earlier quizzes or any lectures, you can ask me and we can clear those before we move on. Are there any doubts? No? Okay. So, okay. Yeah. So let's move on. So, in this week's lectures, we mostly discussed about human ecology and we talked about introduction and the impacts of humans that we are having on the environment. We talked about our population growth and food requirements and about how to achieve sustainable development. So, let me ask you this. What is Anthropocene? Or how do you define Anthropocene? Anthropocene is geological age, current age, which is more conducive for human beings. Okay, hypothetical time period with huge influence of humans on Earth system. Yes, you both are correct. So Anthropocene is basically it is an unofficial unit of geological time. So it is not like anything official like the Triassic period, Jurassic period, all those. So it's an unofficial unit of geological time and it is used to describe the most recent period where humans have had the highest impact or significant impact on the planet's climate as well as the planet's ecosystem. And it roughly starts around the time of industrialization. Okay, so yes, moving on. So what are the various impacts that humans have on the environment? What are the various impacts that we have on our environment? Like, can you name a few? Pollution, yes. What else? Common things. Okay, ozone depletion. Yes, we are depleting the ozone. Overuse of earth resources. Yes, we are overexploiting. There is habitat destruction. Okay, yes. So you both probably know most of these things. So the various impacts that we are having right now on the environment include things like overconsumption. As you both know, that the population of or the human population is on the rise. We have a high population, which means we have high amount of consumerism because everybody wants everything and so to meet these demands we have more and more industries which are overproducing their products, and again which is this is a positive feedback cycle. More people, more requirements, more demands, and then there are more industries fulfilling those requirements and such. After overconsumption comes habitat destruction. As you know, we've been destroying habitats, we've been destroying forests for, say, making land for agriculture to again meet the demands of the increasing human populations to meet the food requirements. We've been destroying habitats for getting timber, for laying roads, for constructing cities, all these things. There is desertification because of this destruction of habitat that we talked about. There is soil that is left without any plants to hold it together. The soil is loose. If there is wind, it will move away. If there is a flow of water, it is going to get moved by the water, and then eventually you're going to have a desert in that area because it will no longer be productive enough because there are no plants to hold the soil together. And this also happens after overgrazing. If there is overgrazing, then the soil becomes loose eventually and it gets turned into a desert. Ocean acidification, very common thing. Since we have been increasing the carbon dioxide emissions, this carbon dioxide is going to go nowhere but into the oceans. It is going to get dissolved into the water, into the ocean water, which is leading to the acidification of the oceans. And increased um, acidification leads to coral bleaching, which is destroying habitats again, because corals are a habitat of many fishes and many other organisms, marine organisms that live there. So many of these various impacts are interlinked with each other and they follow positive feedback loops. Then there is ozone depletion, as you pointed out. Ozone depletion, basically, you all might know, since we have been increasing the use of air conditioning and vehicles and all these things, there is more and more greenhouse gases now. There is more methane, there is more chlorofluorocarbons, and all of these in the end react with the ozone that is present up there and lead to ozone depletion, which you might know will allow the UV radiations from the sun to reach the earth's surface and not just lead to global warming but also impact our own selves. We're going to impact ourselves because these UV radiations don't just impact other animals, but they impact us with skin cancer and such deadly diseases. Moving on, we are facing a loss of biodiversity at rapid rates, which we discussed in the last class, and there is a change in the distribution, as we discussed, because of increasing climate, because of increasing global temperatures. Organisms are shifting their ranges, they are moving up on the mountains, and these are some things that are being caused because of human activities. Then there is climate change because of ozone depletion, because of increased level of um these gases. We are facing global warming because of these greenhouse gases, which absorb a lot of the heat from the sun and they increase the temperatures on the Earth's surface and the Earth's atmosphere. So there is climate change, there is melting of glaciers, there is rise of the sea levels, and eventually in the future there is a prediction that most of the coastal areas are going to get submerged if we don't do something about it already. There is soil erosion, there is change in the geomorphology, so we discussed it already. If there is habitat destruction, if you take down forests, then there is going to be soil erosion. If there's soil erosion, you're going to change how the landscape was and what it looked like and how it is going to be in the future. Then we are altering the biogeochemical cycles, the various cycles like the nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, water cycle, all these are getting impacted because of human activities. So that is what we mean by altering the biogeochemical cycles. Then there are things like changing the elemental composition of atmosphere. So a lot of these nuclear power plants that we have set up, they release radioactive substances which alter the composition of the atmosphere. What are the elements that are found naturally in the atmosphere? And as was discussed in the lecture, the levels of carbon dioxide, C12 and C14 ratios are getting impacted because of the increased fossil fuel combustion. Then next we have introduction of invasive species. Humans have been the only species which have moved between continents, and they along with them have taken some species either by mistake, either they were present in the ships, they were attached to the ship hulls, or either they were taken there as pets or to decorate their gardens. But these have now turned into invasive species. They're found everywhere in the new habitat that they inhabit. Then there is pollution, as you said, of all forms. There is air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, light pollution, noise pollution, all forms of pollutions, all because of humans. And as I discussed before, there is coral bleaching. So, how do you think can we reduce the impact or reduce the impact that we are having on the environment? What are some things we can do to decrease our impact? Okay, so yeah, so there are three things. So, first of all, as you all might know, there's this equation which is impact is equal to population multiplied by affluence multiplied by technology. So, out of these three, all of them are on a rise. Population is on the rise. Yes, sustainable management in every sector, correct. But here I'm talking about this equation of impact, which is equal to population into affluence into technology. And as was pointed out, all three of them are on the rise. The population is on the rise. The needs of every individual, which is affluence, the consumerism is on the rise. The technological advances are on the rise. So, can we reduce our impact by reducing population? Or, if yes, how long do you think would it take for humans to control their population? Since we're already at such a huge number, we definitely cannot do that anytime sooner, right? Yeah. Yes, so we can reduce our impact by improving the use of technology, by using technology for good things. So we can reduce our impact by reducing population, by reducing technological advances, by reducing affluence. But which of these are actually feasible? So none of these are actually feasible, because for reducing population we're going to take a lot of time, because right now the population is already at such a huge number that taking it down is going to take about a century. Reducing affluence would technically mean that you would have to reduce your quality of life, which is again a little dicey. You do not want people to not meet their needs, right? We can reduce consumerism in a way that we should prevent ourselves, or we should stop ourselves for buying unnecessary things that fall into our wants but not our needs, things that you can live without but you just would like to have them. We can reduce that much, but you cannot reduce affluence in the sense that you cannot reduce the quality of medical services that you want to have for everybody. And you cannot reduce, like, you cannot tell everybody to stop using vehicles to go from one place to another, those things. And reducing technological advances is another thing. We also cannot do that, but as Afia pointed out, we can instead use technology to do good things, to say for improving our recycling efforts, for improving, um for finding out new ways of using things like plastics. Like uh, there was this person who found out, or there was this company that has started using plastic in laying down roads. So for making roads, they're now using plastic wastes. Yes, electrical vehicle, renewable energy resources. You can come up with technologies that give you renewable energy resources, and then you can use electrical vehicles. All these things which are going to minimize the waste production, minimize the pollution that we are causing, as well as use renewable energy resources. Okay, so moving on to sustainability and sustainable development. So, what we're going to learn in the next few slides is what is sustainability, what are the pillars of sustainability, what are the several features of sustainability, what is sustainable development, and how do you achieve this. So, what is sustainability? Can you guys tell me? This should be very easy. Able to live with minimal resources. Okay. Development process taking into consideration the needs of future generations while using resources. Correct. Use the resources in a way to maintain it for the next generation also. Correct. So you all are correct. And it is basically the it is basically so sustainability is derived from this Latin word which is sustinere. And to sustain means that you can maintain and you can support the resources over a long period of time. It is like that these resources will be able to stay for a longer period of time. And as you pointed out, it is the ability of humans to meet their current needs for natural resources without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their needs of these same resources. It means that we should manage our natural resources in such a way that it does not affect the environment, so that the environment does not face a decline because of the various stresses that we are imposing on it. Okay. And Morelli defined sustainability as meeting the resources and service needs of the current and the future generations without compromising the health of the ecosystems that provide these resources. Okay, so this is the definition of sustainability. And what are the two key concepts that we talk about in the definition of sustainability? Can you guys tell me what are the two key concepts that are highlighted in the definition of sustainability? Yeah, so there is needs and there is the idea of limitation. Correct. So an important thing to note is that needs is not equal to wants. So, in the definition of sustainability, when we talk about meeting the needs of the present and the future, we are only talking about the genuine requirements of the people, the things that the humans, cannot live without at all. For example, the medical services or the food requirements, things like that. But we're not talking about the wants. There are a lot of things that we want. There is a lavish lifestyle that we want, but that is not something that we need to survive and to sustain ourselves, right? And the idea of limitation says talks about the limitations that we face in meeting the needs while making sure that the future generations also meet their needs. And these are the limitations that are imposed by the state of technology and the social organization at this point. Like at this point in time, what is the state of the technology, how technologically advanced we are, and what is the social organization. These two things will impose limitations on us meeting our current needs while making sure that the future generations will also meet their needs. Okay, so moving on to the three pillars of sustainability. Can you guys tell me what are the three pillars of sustainability? This should be pretty easy. Environment, yes. Economy, and social. Correct. So, so there are three pillars of sustainability. There is the environmental pillar, which is also called planet. There is the economic pillar, which leads to profits. Then there is the social pillar, which involves people. And when you, all of these are nested in each other. There is no economy without a society, and there is no society without an environment. And when you consider environment and economy together, we are trying to get toward it makes the life viable. If you're talking about social sustainability and economic sustainability, it makes us all equal. And you're talking about social sustainability and environmental sustainability, it makes things bearable. And together, all three of them form sustainability. And the things that fall, so this is a concept that was put forward by Bob Willard, the three-legged stool of sustainability. And the three pillars are the three legs of the stool. There is the environmental leg, the social leg, and the economic leg. The environmental leg basically is talks about protecting the natural capital, where that is the natural resources that we have: land, water, air, minerals. Those are the things that we take from the nature. So the natural resources that we have, and we need to protect them for the welfare of who? For the welfare of humans themselves. Okay. And it implies that the businesses out there, they should achieve positive economic outcomes without harming the environment, either in the short term or in the long term. And how do they do that? How do they not harm the environment in the short or the long term? They do this by staying well within the limits of natural replenishment rates. Replenishment rates means what is the rate at which these natural resources replenish themselves. So if we stay within these limits, we will be able to get profits without harming the environment. And the environmental leg mostly includes zero pollution, minimal waste, using renewable resources, conservation and restoration, conservation of ecosystems, and restoring the already harmed ecosystems. If a habitat has been destroyed, we'll try to restore it. Then there is the social leg. So the social sustainability, it focuses on maintaining and improving the social quality of our life. And here you talk about concepts such as there is reciprocity between humans, there is cohesion amongst the various societies, and they're talking about honesty and the importance of relationship between people. And it aims, as you would have already guessed, it aims for equality for all. And it is the ability of the society to achieve social well-being in the long run. And the social leg includes talks about equality in the work conditions, in getting health services for everybody, in equal education services for everybody, may it be any gender, may it be any age, getting equal education, and community and cultural social justice. Comes the last, which is the economic leg. So the economic sustainability basically talks about businesses and projects utilizing resources efficiently and in a responsible manner, so that it operates in a sustainable manner and ensures profits over long times. So the businesses and the projects, they should use resources in a way that they are profitable and they are also sustainable, as in, and they ensure profits over a long time. And it wants to maintain the capital intact, the capital that, or the investment that goes into the business, it should also not be lost. So if social sustainability here is focusing on improving social equality, economic sustainability focuses on improving our living standards. And it talks about good jobs, job security, which means jobs for everybody, fair wages, may it be any gender, male, female, giving fair wages if they're doing an equal amount of work, talking about the infrastructure and a fair trade between different businesses. So, moving on, what do you think are the various challenges that we face while we're trying to achieve uh, sustainability? This is something similar to the impact that we have. So, why are these what are the challenges that we face while we're trying to talk about getting into sustainable development? There are still many things out there that we cannot stop, right? So, can you guess some of the challenges that humans might face while they're trying to achieve sustainable development? Conflict of vested interests. Okay. So, can you elaborate on that point? What are the vested interests here? In 1 second. Energy crisis, climate change. Correct. You're on the correct path. So, but what were you talking about, Rajeshri? What do you mean by, like, what are the vested interests? Oh, politics. Okay. That is true. That is true as well. So, what I'm talking about here is these challenges that we are having a rapid growth. So, because of an increased growth and development, no doubt our living standards have improved. We have a better quality of life. But many of the products that we use in our daily lives, they are raw material intensive, they are energy intensive. A lot of, yes, lack of awareness. That is also true. So, a lot of the products that we use in our day to day life, they require a lot of raw materials to make, and they are very energy intensive. A lot of energy goes into making these. So, and again, also in this production, there is a lot of pollution that is produced. So, rapid growth and development is one challenge that we are facing. Lack of skills is also important. There is also a challenge that we face while talking about attaining sustainability. There is this rising population and production, as we discussed already. When there is a huge increase, there is a rising level of population, then consequently our demands are increasing, consumerism is on the rise, and for that there is again a huge production. We're trying to increase the production because there is increased consumerism, which leads to an increased requirement for the natural resources, because as I said, all the products that we use are resource intensive, and an increased population size, which is leading to increased demands. It also leads to an increase for resources, which imposes a greater pressure on the environmental systems, and which might not allow the ecosystem enough time to replenish itself, to replenish the resources that we are taking out. Then there is industrialization. Industrialization has led to a rapid rise in pollution, but right now we cannot take down these industries. There is no way to stop it. We can only ask them to become more sustainable, to use renewable sources, to use, like, to reduce the waste production, and to use reusable or recyclable products. And the entire cycle of in which you go out, you explore for raw materials, you extract these raw materials, you use them for making products, you utilize energy, and you transform them into products. There is a lot of waste generation. This all negatively impacts the environment. Then there is the economic crisis. When the economy is on a, like, is going down, when there is an economic crisis, what humans do? Humans, they go out, they overexploit the environment, they overexploit the land for more agriculture, they overexploit the timber sources, the wood, everything like that. But we should keep in mind that both economy and environment go hand in hand. If economy is going down and you exploit the environment, eventually this environment was only going to help you bring up the economy. If you've now exploited the environment, you will not, the economy is again going to face a downfall. Then because of all this, there is increased energy requirements. Energy is something which is necessary for us for our daily survival. We need vehicles, we need light sources, we need electricity. So, and we need to make sure that the future also has enough energy, and they have enough resources which are safe, which are environmentally sound, which are renewable, that they can use. But right now, there are no such resources that uh, fall under all these categories, that they are renewable, they are safe, they have no negative impacts. So we need to make sure to save the energy resources, even the non-renewable energy resources that we are using so quickly. Then yes, there is pollution and increased waste production, there is loss of biodiversity, we are losing species very fast. And here, the species that we're talking about are not just the species that we're talking about are not just the, say, the agricultural species or the animals that we harvest, or the plants that the wild plants that are related to these agricultural species, that we can breed and get high quality yield species. But also we're talking about organisms such as ants, such as termites, such as earthworms, which play a much greater role in maintaining a healthy ecosystem than they are given credit for. So we need to protect all these species before they get extinct. And then the last but not the least is the overharvesting. As we discussed already, overharvesting of animal resources, overharvesting of plant resources, overharvesting of land, and there is habitat destruction, there is resource degradation. All these things, they are going to impact the environment, and they are things that we need to overcome in order to achieve sustainability. So these are some of the challenges that we face. Now, I'm going to talk about this unsustainable take, make, and waste model that most industries use currently and that we need to make a shift from. So, the unsustainable take, make, waste model, here we have the environment, and in this environment comes our society, and in the society is nested the economy, right? Now, here, what we do for our daily needs, we have to make some products that we need to utilize. Say for example, there is a pen, there is a pencil, there is our laptops, machines, anything. So we want to make our products, and for that you take from the environment. You take something from the environment, may it be minerals, may it be iron, may it be wood, anything, may it be coal. So you take these things from the environment, and by that you're degrading the nature as you're extracting all these resources using the various physical means like mining, like blasting, all these things, right? So when you're doing that, there is a lot of waste generation in the first step of taking the resources from the environment. So there is a lot of waste that is produced while extraction. Okay, you take these resources and you use them to make the product that you want, and this also leads to a lot of waste production. While making of the product, there is a lot of waste production during manufacture, there are a lot of byproducts, and when you make the products, again, because of overconsumption, because of increased human demands, there is a lot more product that is made than is required in actuality. So there is overconsumption because of more and more amounts of products that are made, and eventually this also leads to waste. While we use the product, we also produce some waste. For example, you're eating a packet of chips, so you're wasting. We are producing waste in the form of the plastic covering, or say you're using a lot of say you're drinking packed juices, or you're using your mobile phones which come in a covering, or for that mobile phone you're going to buy a cover, you're going to buy a screen guard, eventually the screen guard will break, you're going to buy a new one, all these things. So they're going to lead a lot of waste production. So this is an unsustainable model of, say, businesses or projects or industrial projects, where you're taking raw materials from the environment, you're creating waste at every single step. You are making, and there also you're using a lot of energy to make the products, and you're producing a lot of waste, and then you're making the products in a huge amount, and there is waste. So moving on, some things that we should keep in mind while thinking about sustainability is what are the effects that our actions are having on the natural ecosystem, on the natural environment, which means that we need to keep an accountability of what is our lifestyle, how are we living, and how are we impacting the ecosystem. We should keep in mind that every resource that we are using, may it be water, may it be land, may it be the minerals, all of them are limited. May it be fossil fuels, which we use in huge quantities, they are all limited resources. So we need to give time to the environment to replenish their resources before we finish them. So we should like decrease the speed with which we are using these resources, and we should understand the cost that of the resources that we are consuming. So we don't think twice before using all these things, before switching on our automobiles and standing on, say, red lights. But the resource that we're using, the petroleum that's there in your car, which is getting combusted, which is eventually leading to air pollution also, all of these, even if you're using electric vehicles, they are still not a sustainable solution to everything, because where do you think the electricity is coming from? The electricity is also getting produced in thermal power plants, which are using fossil fuels to produce that electricity with which you're charging your vehicles. So you might have reduced the amount of pollution that you're producing, but the energy sources are still, in the end, not very renewable in that. And the last thing, sustainability cannot be achieved by one person alone, and it needs to work at all these different levels. As an individual, we need to switch our lifestyles to be a little bit more sustainable. As a community in general, we need to have a sustainable lifestyle, and which in turn, as a region, as a nation, and on the global level, we need to practice sustainability. Okay, so moving on to the various features of sustainability. So, sustainability has these various features of resilience, energy, waste minimization, vehicle fuel use, water conservation, sustainable buildings, ecosystem management, and sustainable acquisition. So, when we're talking about resilience, what do you think we mean by resilience? We've already discussed this in the previous tutorials. So, what do you mean by the term resilience? And what do you think it means here in this context? Can anybody tell me? It's the capacity to withstand. Okay. Can you elaborate? It is like you're close, but that's not exactly what is resilience. It is correct though. Anybody else? No? Okay. So, resilience is the ecological ability to replenish after damages. Yes, that is correct. So resilience is the property of any system which has been disturbed from its initial state to return back to that normal state without any external intervention. So, for example, if you destroy a forest and you leave it for some time, because of secondary ecological succession, it is going to recover itself, it is going to become a forest again. So that is resilience. And you might be aware that nature or environment in general has this inherent property of resilience. And it can restore and regain normalcy after being disturbed by the human activities, only and only if the human disturbance stays within this threshold. Because if this threshold of disturbance is passed, if you disturb it to such an extent, the change will become irreversible and it will not be able to come back to its original state. So we must keep in mind what is the biocapacity of the ecosystem and only make changes within that capacity. Okay, moving on to energy. So using renewable sources of energy in a mindful manner, such that we don't even renewable resources, if we use them a lot, they are going to impact. Yes, using clean energy, they're going to impact the environment. So we should be mindful of the way we are using renewable energy, as well as the non renewable energy. We should use that within the limits of their uh, replenishment levels. Then moving on to waste minimization, pollution prevention, you all are aware of it. The increasing population has been increasing the amount of waste that we are producing, increased amount of pollution that we are producing. Many consequences such as eutrophication of lakes, there is increased ocean acidification, there is ozone depletion, everything like that. So we need to minimize these things, we need to prevent pollution. Then there is vehicle and fuel use. So we should be mindful of how we are using vehicles and how we're using fuels. You can, be sustainable in a way that you can use carpools, you can switch to public transport if that's possible in your city. So all these things can be practiced. Water conservation, you're all aware of. There are many ways in which you can conserve water. We should do rainwater harvesting. We should practice um, mindful usage of water resources. We should not leave a tap open, all these things. Then, sustainable buildings. Why are we talking about sustainable buildings? That is because buildings are an organized or are a structure that use maximum amount of energy. So much energy goes into keep a building running. There are so many air conditioners, there are so many electricity, lights, there are so many switches, sockets that you use to charge your laptops, charge your mobile phones. So it is very important that we build our buildings in a sustainable manner. And how is that possible? It is possible if you use architecture, if you make it in such a way. Your building can be made in a way that it allows a lot of sunlight to come in, which will reduce your need for uh, switching on lights at least during the day. Yes, you can use eco-friendly building materials, that is correct. You can try and switch to say better to say less energy intensive sources of like for light you can use LEDs, which use less energy but give more light, those things. Then you can make it in such a way that there is a lot of air circulation, there's a lot of ventilation, so you would not require a lot of air conditioning and all these things. At least you'll not require them in say early mornings or at in the evenings. So there are many ways in which we can build sustainable buildings. Then moving on to ecosystem management. This is just a management of ecosystem in a way that you can sustain it for a longer time. You do not destroy the ecosystem, you do not destroy the habitat, all those things. And sustainable acquisition talks about acquiring raw materials from the environment in a sustainable manner. For example, there are these countries like Canada and New Zealand. Um, they practice this thing called crop cycling for trees. So they have this patch of land that they categorize as a managed forest, and there they plant those trees that they require. For the timber trees, they will plant the trees which give you a good quality of timber. They plant them, and after say 4 or 5 years, they're going to cut down these forests and use them um, for meeting their requirements, for meeting their wood requirements. And after cutting down, they're going to replant these areas. Another thing to do is when you go out and you're going to say cut down some timber, you don't cut down all the trees out there. You don't just clear the patch of land, but you cut down some of the species, some of the particular trees, and you leave behind some trees of those same species, because then the area can replenish itself and you will not even need to maintain it. Okay, moving on to sustainable development. So there is a minute difference between sustainability and sustainable development. Sustainability is basically the mindset in which you will use all the resources within the physical needs, and you will allow the ecosystem to replenish itself, and you will live within the physical, natural, social, cultural, all these limits, so that the humans can thrive for a long time. Sustainable development, it is just another way of saying that we want to create growth and progress through addition of physical, economic, environmental, and social processes to improve the quality of life. Sustainability is a long-term goal, but sustainable development are the pathways and the processes that you utilize to achieve that goal of sustainability. Okay, and the Brundtland report in 1987, it provided a definition of sustainable development, and the report is called Our Common Future, and it defines sustainable development as a form of development that meets the needs of present without compromising the needs of the future generations. The definition is more or less the same as sustainability, but sustainability is the goal and sustainable development are the pathways that you're going to take to achieve that goal. For example, using sustainable agriculture and forestry, sustainable production and consumption, good governance, all of these things are sustainable development. So, Talking about the Millennium Development Goals. So, the Millennium Development Goals in 2000, the United Nations had a meeting which was called the Millennium Summit of United Nations, and they came up with these 8 goals that were mostly targeted towards the developing and the poor countries, and they were set to be achieved by the year 2015. And what are these 8 goals? These 8 goals include eradicating extreme hunger and poverty, achieving universal primary education, promoting gender equality and empowering women, reducing child mortality, improving maternal health, combating various diseases like HIV, AIDS, malaria, ensuring environmental sustainability, and developing a global partnership between various countries for the development, for sustainable development. After these Millennium Development Goals, they were taken forward by these new goals called the Sustainable Development Goals. These were put forward in 2015, and they were put forward during the United Nations Sustainable Development Summit, which happened on 25th September in 2015. And here now they came up with 17 goals of sustainable development, and these were set by the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the United Nations. And these 17 goals, they are set to be achieved by the year 2030. One important thing to note is that these goals are for the entire world. They're not just aimed at developing and poor nations, but they're aimed at all the countries out there. And the sustainable development goals are: number one, no poverty, which means they want to eradicate poverty in all its forms and from everywhere. Number two, there's zero hunger, which means that they want to end hunger, and they want which implies that you want to attain food security for everybody, and there should be improved nutrition, and there should be sustainable agriculture. Then there should be a good health and well-being. So you want to ensure a healthy life and well-being for everybody without a discrimination between ages or from which country they belong or anything like that. Then you want the fourth goal includes a quality of education. You want to ensure quality education which is inclusive, equitable, and equal for everybody. So inclusive, equitable, and quality education for everybody belonging to all genders and to all ages. Then there is gender equality. You want to achieve equality of gender for both males, females, and you want to empower females. Clean water sanitization, that is the sixth goal, which means that you want to ensure that everybody is able to get clean water. There is availability of sanitized water, clean water, and we are sustainably managing all of this. Seventh goal is about ensuring Seventh goal is about affordable and clean energy. It is about ensuring access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable forms of energy. For example, we're talking about renewable resources of energy. So, the seventh goal is about getting clean sources of energy for everybody. Eighth one is decent work and economic growth. So, the eighth goal is about promotion of inclusive and sustainable economic growth for everyone. And you want full and productive employment, decent work for all. Ninth one is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. In this, you focus on building resilient infrastructure, focus on promoting inclusivity and sustainable industrialization, and you want to foster innovation. The 10th goal is reducing inequalities. So, you want there to be less inequalities, be it among regions, among societies, or even among the various countries in the world. So, you want everybody to be at par with everybody else. Next one, 11th goal is sustainable cities and communities. You want your cities to be more sustainable, to be safe, to be inclusive, to be resilient. The next goal, the 12th one, is about responsible consumption and production. You want to ensure that our consumption patterns are well within the limits of the ecosystem and they are sustainable. 13th goal is climate action. So, you want to take action against climate change, you want to combat climate change, and you want to reverse its actions. 14th goal, like All of these goals were focusing on life, on human life. Now we're talking about life below water. So you want to conserve and you want to manage oceans. You want to use the oceans and marine resources, but in a sustainable manner. 15th goal is life on land. You want to protect, you want to restore, you want to promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems. We're not saying that don't use the terrestrial ecosystems, use them, but in a sustainable manner, in a manner that allows the ecosystem to replenish itself. And you want to sustainably manage forests, you want to combat desertification, uh, you want to carry out environmental remediation, and you want to reverse land degradation. 16th goal is having peace, justice, and strong institutions. You want peace for everybody. You want peaceful, inclusive societies with sustainable development, and we want justice for all. And 17th is building partnerships among nations so that we can achieve all of these development goals that we have mentioned before. So you can go to the United Nations website and you can learn more about these various goals and what is happening to achieve these goals. Moving on to how have these been implemented in our country? How is India trying to implement the sustainable development goals? So India has this institution called Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog stands for National Institute for Transforming India, and this is the country's premier policy making institution, and it is expected to take forward the economic growth of the country. It is also in charge of overseeing the implementation of the sustainable development goals within the country, and it brings together the center, the state, and the union territories so that all of these three units together can achieve the various sustainability goals, the development goals. So, Niti Aayog is also in charge of issuing a progress report for India towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. You can visit the Niti Aayog website and you will see that there is this report of 2022 where it talks about how well we have achieved and how far we are in achieving these development goals for the country. Moving on, there is this Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. It is also called MOSPI. This ministry, it created the various indicators. So this ministry created the various indicators out there in order to keep a track of how much is our progress and to determine the extent to which we have achieved our goals. So for achieving the sustainable development goals, they have created various indicators. By using them, we can keep a track of how far are we in achieving these goals. So they have these six committees that they have created. Number one is for food security, agriculture, and poverty. Number two, for labor, employment, and education. Number three is for health and gender related issues. Number four is for climate change and environment. Number five is capacity building and good governance. And number six is for big data, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and machine learning for these various sustainable development goals. So, number six is the technological committee. So, there are various movements that India has started, that the government has started. There are various, as you call them, programs that have been implemented by the country. And some of these include the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Then there is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which is for urban infrastructure. There is Skill India, which tries to which mentions Kaushal Bharat, Kushal Bharat, which means if which tries to teach various different skills to the youth of the country. Then there is Niti Aayog that I already mentioned. It's the National Institution for Transforming India. There is Startup India, which gives incentives to these startups, which promotes the startups. And if you bring up your ideas there, they may invest in your ideas. Then there is G20 Summit that happened in India this year. You all might be aware of this already. Then there is Pradhan Mantri Ujjwal Yojana. There is Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. You all might be aware of this. And then there is Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, which is to this and the National Health Mission, both of them are aimed towards improving the health of the country and reducing the diseases that people might have to face. Then there is Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao for gender equality and improving the and empowering the women of India and empowering the girl child of India. And then there is the Samagra Shiksha, which means education for all. So this one is also has been put forward by the Department of School Education and Literacy, and it tries to promote inclusive education for everybody. Now we talked about the unsustainable take make model. Now later we're going to talk about the sustainable model, but before that let's talk about the ways in which we can achieve environmental sustainability. As we discussed, we can control populations, which can either be by family planning, it can be by using contraceptives. And you all would know that the population right now is at such a huge level that it cannot continue. It cannot keep on growing because that is going to harm the environment tremendously. So we need to limit the population to a desirable level so that we can slow down the impact that we're having. Conserving the biodiversity, as we discussed, we need to conserve biodiversity so that we're able to have a healthy ecosystems, right? And then there is reusing and recycling of waste. You need to design your products in such a way that they are reusable, that they are recyclable, recycling at least 60% of the materials which are discarded as trash should be our goal. And designing or redesigning in such a way, designing and redesigning the manufacturing industries, the various businesses in a way that they are closed loop systems instead of being open loop systems. The one that we discussed, take make waste model, is an open loop system, but the one that we will discuss later is a closed loop system, which we should try and implement so that we have a sustainable way of improving our lives. We should reduce the emissions and we should minimize the waste production. Then there is reducing consumption. As I said, this should be something that is implemented at a personal level, at an individual level. We should try and remove from our life all the things that are not really necessary, that are just, we like, a lot of us are hoarders. We try and keep on collecting little things which might not even be necessary. So we should try and reduce our consumption. Even with the current fashion era, we are increasing so many clothes that we have, but they're not really necessary. So we should try and reduce our consumption. Then there is efficient usage of resources. So you should keep your harvesting levels of renewable resources within the regenerative capacities of these resources. So why are we calling them harvesting rates? Because we're talking about renewable resources. So when you're talking about renewable resources, you harvest them. But when you talk about non-renewable resources, since they're not replenishable, you talk about depleting the non-renewable resources. So we should also keep the depletion of non-renewable resources well within a level so that they can eventually, the new resources can be made, like eventually they are substituted by the renewable resources. And also so that, like, eventually there will be more coal when more fossils get fossilized. So we should reduce our usage till a level that they can get uh, replenished. Then talking about waste management, we said we should reduce the waste, we should manage the wastes better. They should not just be land dumping and all these things. We should focus on recycling, reusing, and all those things. Creating an awareness about this is very important. That is why we're having this class, so that everybody knows what are the sustainable development goals, what is sustainability, how we can implement it within our lifestyles, all of these things. Integrating land use and water management. So you need to plan your land use in a manner that there is enough space for agriculture, there is enough forest land. All of these things you need to plan. Even the cities should be planned in such a manner that they do not come in the way of forests and the forests are not destroyed. And water resource management, we know right now there is a lot of river flooding, there is a lot of silting, there is a lot of over exploitation and water logging. we need to manage all of these and uh, promote water management. Okay, moving on to the yes, Sriraj, do you have a question? Sriraj, do you have a question? Okay, so moving on. So we talked about the take, make, waste model. Now let's talk about the sustainable borrow, use, and return model. That this is called a closed loop model, and you will soon see why. So again, we have environment, we have society, and we have the economy. So moving on, now we talk about not taking from the environment, but we talk about borrowing from the environment. So how is that possible? So you invest in the natural capital that you're eventually going to use, and you produce the resources also radically without stressing the environment. So if you're going to extract timber, you, like Canada and New Zealand are doing, you plant more and more timber so that you can extract them later. So you borrow the resources with a plan to return them back as well. So you're not taking them, but you're borrowing them. And this will lead to less waste production. Then you use the resources in making the products that you want, in also in performing various services. You use these resources and you consume them in a responsible manner. And moving on, you return, you do not plan on wasting all of the byproducts, but you plan on using these byproducts as a raw material for some other industry. So this is called ecologically redesigning your industries and making them into a closed loop production. If there is some resource that you're utilizing and you're making it into a product, but there is some waste product, you can use this waste product in some other industry and use it to make something else. So you will not need to again and again take out the resources from the environment. Okay. So this is the sustainable borrow, use, and return model. And this is all for today's tutorial session. If you guys have any doubts, you can ask me. Any doubts from the quizzes, the previous quizzes, or any doubts from the lectures, anything, I'm here. And if you have no doubts, you can leave the meeting. Thank you. Does anybody have any doubts? Okay, so if there are no further doubts, I'm going to end this session. Thank you all for joining.